Is the Force in balance? Is Palpatine the greatest Sith Lord ever? This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss any and all aspects of pop culture. We are your hosts, Tyler.
And Chris.
So, a little context for that opening. We've had a little, debate simmering on the back burner for about a month now.
Something like that.
So, Chris sent me a thing on Instagram from Star Wars Holocron, and it said, when you leave the cinema and realize J.J. Abrams ended the entire Skywalker saga on Palpatine successfully using love to manipulate, corrupt, hurt, or kill every single Skywalker across 3 generations, ultimately resulting in the total eradication of the Skywalker, Solo, and Amidala bloodlines, whilst Palpatine's heir lives on to claim the Skywalker name and legacy. And then I replied with, that solidifies Palpatine as the greatest Sith, and does that prove that light and dark will always balance each other out?
And tell him what the image was.
It's from Rick and Morty, where they're doing the heist. It says, you son of a bitch. Yeah.
So I think that happened at work when you texted me back or responded to that. So I think I misread it, or I misremembered it as time went on. Because when I saw today that you had said, does that prove the Force will always balance? I think I had misread it as, does that prove that the Force is in balance, or is in balance now, or something? Because that implies the Force is in balance. So either way, it's not that different, but that does imply, from your perspective, you're viewing it as the Force is in balance now that Rey is the only Jedi, I guess, and I guess you love Rey, so...
My thinking was more along the lines of, if we look at it from long term, because first, people were just discovering the Force, and there's a wide range of Force users. Then that eventually came down to Sith, Jedi, light, dark. And at one point, there were roughly as many Sith as Jedi. So enough dark, enough light, still in balance. Now, the Sith broke down into the rule of 2. So that tipped the balance from roughly equal to only 2 dark at any given time, at least in power, to rival the light side. Not that there wasn't other potentially dark users. Then Palpatine comes through, wipes out the Jedi, putting it roughly kind of back in balance, except too far on the other side. There's only the 2 Sith Lords, or the Sith Lord and Apprentice, but now the light is essentially turned off. It's in hiding. So the balance is now to the dark. Then it swings back the other way when Luke comes in, defeats Palpatine, and then Vader dies. So now it's back to light again. And so the dark is trying to creep back in, and that's when Luke gets the vision of Kylo's darkness creeping back, and that essentially gives the end for whatever Palpatine's plan was to hook back, bringing it back out of balance. And now we see that even Luke was starting to go towards the teachings of the Jedi not being correct. And Yoda's Force Ghost essentially burned all the Jedi teachings and Sith teachings that Luke had gathered. Then once Kylo Ren dies, Luke's dead, leaving Rey, who was not traditionally trained, has that line to the dark side, chose the light side. And then we see Grogu, who rejected the teachings of the Jedi to follow a more Mandalorian way. It's all swinging back to a neutrality instead of a light side and dark side, and find the balance in the middle. Because even with the Ahsoka series, the people we see now, the Force users, aren't Sith or Jedi. It's like the Night Sisters magic. And even then, it's a different teachings of the Jedi. And the bad guys we see in that too are somewhere in the middle of Jedi and Sith, because he's holding on to his Jedi past to some degree because he shows reverence for Ahsoka and his past teachings and all that, but he's not quite gone to Sith yet, as indicated by their lightsaber colors.
Who are you talking about?
Ray Stevens' character.
Oh, yeah. Baylan.
Yeah, Baylan. I don't know why I can't ever remember his name. But to me, that shows that everything is looking for the balance.
There's this whole debate online. Some people say gray Jedi cannot exist because it literally goes against the idea of a Jedi. A Jedi is a binary state. You can either be a Jedi or you're not a Jedi, but you can't be a gray Jedi. That would not be being a Sith either. It'd be a third thing entirely, and you just have to... It's really semantics, because you just have to throw out the word Jedi, and it's what people are saying or using to make you understand.
Yeah.
It's the closest approximation to what the thing is. He's clearly not evil. He's working to his own ends. Balin, that's I'm still referring to. Part of my issue with that is how J.J. Abrams handled a lot of this. I don't think it would always necessarily need to be a forest fire. That's what Lucas used. Also, the concept of, I think J.J. Abrams heard that in that documentary portion where George Lucas said they rhyme. It's like poetry. They rhyme. That's his poem. You can't just rhyme on somebody else's poem and then call it your poem. Yes, you got the rights to take over and write a new Star Wars film. So write a new Star Wars film. Don't just copy the original trilogy, which is what he did. Like, the more I started analyzing aspects of this, I was like, this was so obvious, but I never actually caught on to how much of this that there was. You know, we have to believe that Kylo is redeemable because Darth Vader was redeemable. Darth Vader killed Ben right in front of Luke, but, you know, there was a time we kind of gave up on him, but then he came back around to thinking, I do have to redeem him. And that was it was the forest fire of clearing the Jedi away, because the Jedi were the light side, but they'd become corrupted in a sense. And I'm not saying corrupted, it's just that they weren't evil. They just weren't the true versions of themselves that they'd intended to be or trained or studied to be. And they also hadn't had an adversary in 1,000 years or something.
Yeah.
Is that at that point? So that was kind of a weird thing that I guess the Sith were kind of lurking in the shadows. They were there and waiting to strike, I guess. Also, I think there's a deleted scene. It's either a deleted scene or a scene I always forget where Ray Park actually has a speaking line where he says, "At last we'll have." It was in the trailer, I think. At last we'll reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we'll have revenge.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what'd they do to you? Is that you gonna get back to that? Like, what was the revenge for? Nobody explained that, and that's on Lucas too. And Lucas isn't perfect. Just so everybody knows, if anybody's still listening to these, I don't think George Lucas is perfect. There's major flaws with those films, but if you look at it from a Shakespearean narrative, I think it's one of the most epic stories ever told to Episode 6. Beyond that, it's not his story, and he's not shy about telling you that. So I did want to read a couple of comments from that thing. I went back and clicked on it. I didn't have time. Oh, this is, I guess, 5 weeks ago, so I think we must have just recorded
Yeah,
previously.
I think it's like right after.
My only response was, it's Chinatown. What are you gonna do? The next response that I saw was, how in the world do people walk away with that? How do you blatantly miss the film, what the films are saying? It's maddening that you think this is what happened. Palpatine did not win. If you can't see that, I don't know how to help you. Wasn't his plan for her to kill him and then he would take over her body? I think
that's where it's kind of heading. I think this guy's missing the point a little bit. No one's saying no one's saying Palpatine won.
I mean, she did kill him. And
Yeah.
that was his plan. And I mean, if you took over somebody's body, the one thing that would get you killed, like, immediately would be to announce it, but whatever. And of course, he had a billion ships there, which, what are on those? Is it zombies? Is it nothing? Is it one guy on each ship? Anyway, the next one was basically saying, the films say nothing. You know, it's just a money grab. The final line in this one was, there was no love or cinematic value to them. And I understand why that person would say that. It's just, that's the only reason to have made this post or this comment. If we go back to a real world writing scenario, it's basically this. The reason she is a Palpatine at all was written by committee. The worst thing that happens to art at all. If you're Pablo Picasso and you're stuck and you can't decide on what to do next, and you have 3 or 4 sleepless nights, and then you finally go in and put some blue paint on something, or maybe you go down to the cafe and you discuss it with Salvador Dali and Andy Warhol. Could he have been alive at the same time? I think they were alive at the same time. I don't remember. Yeah, they definitely.
They would have been alive at the same time, whether or not they were active at the same time. That's the question.
Yeah, for the thought experiment, we'll say that close enough. In defense of me. Also, I don't think they may have met, but I don't think they did. And you discuss it with some, if not friends, colleagues, respected peers, and then you go back and you make your own decision. This was there. I mean, there's so much that's I think even Daisy Ridley has talked about how like they kept changing their minds. They wouldn't even give her a new script. It would just be J.J. Abrams poking his head in and being like, "You're a Kenobi," or finally it was like, "Palps is granddaddy," and it's like, what the So, has someone punched him in the face? I'm not advocating violence. I'm just asking if this has happened. I'm not saying I would enjoy knowing it. I'm just saying if somebody would let me know if somebody has at least punched J.J. Abrams in the mouth, because this behavior is unacceptable. That annoys the piss out of me. So, given that, it's the worst. And George Lucas, these were like the most famous independent films made, Lucasfilm. He made sure that he got creative control. He wanted, for better or for worse, criticize him all day long. We don't know what J.J. Abrams would have done. Honestly, we don't know what a J.J. Abrams trilogy would have looked like, because there's probably dozens of people responsible for the concepts and ideas that finally went into this. What they finally went with was, she's a Palpatine? That's just, not even like his daughter, but his granddaughter seems so odd and like such a far-fetched thing and convoluted that where we land, I know, the original debate, I don't think we set out to say what the debate actually was, for me, it was, is the Force in balance? And I think because I had misunderstood what your point was, will the Force always balance? Will it tilt, no matter how far it goes, will it tilt back to imbalance? From that perspective, I end the debate and say, I agree, but it's based on how much time.
Yeah.
Is it a strong shift back that it always is pulling back to that? Or is it something that, like an oak tree, it might take 1,000 years to reach to that level again, because it's not really trying. It's just going to get there inevitably because of, 1,000 or 2,000 years is just like, it's going to happen at some point just by coincidence or chance or what have you. So yeah, doesn't feel like it. It feels like all of the goodness was eradicated from the universe and we're left with like a seedling of, maybe that's not Palpatine in there. Wink. I don't know. Has it been proven? She said, the last thing she does is just straight up lie to a stranger. I'm just saying, Luke would not do that. The most powerful and greatest Jedi in the universe believes in truth, justice, and the American way, like Superman and Captain America, the greatest heroes of our time. So, I'm just saying, the last image we're seeing is that evil person, probably Palpatine in there, definitely a Palpatine in there because she's a Palpatine. And maybe Sheev, is that his name? Sheev Palpatine?
Like his son?
No, his name.
Oh, maybe? I can't remember now.
I feel whatever his name is.
So you mean his first name isn't Senator?
Yeah.
Or Chancellor?
How much of these films is actually not in the script? That is either you think it's fan fiction, but it's actually just... Because they never say Palpatine in the original trilogy either. And I had this doll that was Anakin, but as an old man. But not a hologram. He's just in his Jedi gear. But it's Anakin. The guy who played him, I can't think of his name, but in the original, when they take the mask off and he appears as a Force ghost. And in the back, it lays out, now this was released in the 90s, the early 90s, so the no man's land of Star Wars. And Lucas didn't write the expanded universe. He had ideas and things, but he didn't go out and just sit out writing those novels like he was J.R.R. Tolkien or whatever. He was producing Indiana Jones and stuff. So it's in there, it lays out the fight over the lava and everything, and talks about, Palpatine's influence. And I was like, did they ever once confirm his name? Or did they only ever call him the Emperor in the original trilogy? I don't think they did. And that's the weird thing, is it was correct. It was a fight over, and they don't mention the fight either. These things all kind of develop slowly, or George Lucas, when asked by the toy company, was just like, yeah, that sounds right. And then it kind of developed over time. It's just so strange how these films are written, and that's what the debate comes down to.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I'll try to go through it. As far as the comments, I get people's frustration and not wanting to accept it, but as far as what I am presenting, those movies, they're out there. It's part of it. It's canon. So that's the information I'm using. For good or for bad. That's the information we have. So that's what I am taking from. And as far as what the one guy said, no one said Palpatine won in that conversation. But fan theories leads into another thing. Was it even actually Palpatine this whole time? Because there's a fan theory that when Palpatine is telling Anakin about Plagueis...
The lies.
Yeah. And what he had discovered in the Force, and that Palpatine supposedly killed his master, which is Plagueis. The theory is that Plagueis figured out how to save off death by transferring his consciousness into someone else. And so he's been training his apprentices to find the strongest. And that's why it was kind of encouraged for the apprentice to take on an apprentice to become the next master and have his apprentice in place. That way they could figure out who the strongest was when it was time to transfer bodies. And in this case, it was Palpatine. And possibly he was trying to do that again, because we see that he has himself in his dead body trying to get Rey back to transfer there. So that gives credence to that. But was that Palpatine's plan, or is that Plagueis' plan? And so is that actually Plagueis carrying on? And also goes to further show, was that Plagueis' plan or his master's plan?
If only they'd thought to actually write something like that in, or have a subplot that made sense, that actually connected back to the prequels like that. Because that would have been way better than, 30 minutes on a casino planet where they get arrested for a parking violation.
Yeah.
Now, I've gotten back into criticizing the films for the film's sake and the writing therein, but that's part of it. Well, that part isn't part of it. I just couldn't resist. But, yeah.
One more thing. As far as the Jedi lying, that is completely a Jedi thing. These are not the droids you're looking for. You don't want to sell me death sticks.
That's in a life or death situation.
The one was. The other one was, this guy's annoying me.
And he wanted him to do drugs. Do you need me to get the statistics out for, also they're literally called death sticks. We don't know that those are just cigarettes.
I didn't say he wasn't lying for good, but...
Whereas Rey was just like... Yeah, this is my name. And it would have been a better... I was trying to think about rewriting that ending. Like, if they went with that ending, what should they have done? Should she have just owned her name as Palpatine or whatever her name was?
By the way, I am the only surviving member of that guy who's tormented you for the past 40 years.
Hey, there...
It's like, yeah, I can... That'd be like, oh yeah, what's your last name? Hitler?
Have you seen that documentary?
Yeah, and those guys have chosen to not carry that name on.
There are people. There's people who are not related to Hitler but have the name Hitler, and there's a documentary about this. I did not finish it. It's just because it's not really. There's no through line. It's just a collection of interviews with people. There's like, one of them's like a teenage girl. And it's like growing up, when you're a kid, your first knowledge isn't from the Second World War, unless, you were born in a concentration camp or whatever. So a lot of these people are like, this is just my name. Like, I'm not changing it. You. And then, of course they do find out about it and they're like, that's unfortunate, but why would I change my name because of that? And I think about that and how little of a connection I have to my own last name. Like, I'm not intrinsically proud of it or like it or care for it simply because it's the name that my family also has. And then Michael Keaton, his name is not Michael Keaton, it's actually Michael Douglas, and he's never officially changed it. He just has the stage name Michael Keaton, but in most things he still uses Michael Douglas, and he'll say like Michael Keaton Douglas or something, and is really open about it and talks about it. There was already a Michael Douglas, and that's why he had to take Keaton, and he just kind of took it at random. When he did that, he says he's really proud of his name, and he did not want to give up his name. And so I think about these things sometimes. I'll let you borrow that Hitler documentary, though, because that's an interesting take. Do I think she should have done that? No, it would have been weird because the stigma, I'm not oblivious to that. And not to say, like, if my last name were Hitler, you better believe I would change it. In this situation, I feel like have her turn back and look at Luke and I guess Leia's ghosts, which, considering what really happened, continued to be a little up, but just have her smile and walk away, because I felt like it was like spitting in the face of 2 generations of people, not the people that came before, but the people after, because, you know, where Palpatine is sitting right in there in this young woman's body, just cackling away in her head like a psychopath, and is like, I'm a Skywalker now. Which also, he was the mastermind. Just like, you know, think about, if you do make the Hitler analogy, how many people you think Hitler killed personally with his own bare hands in real life? Is there documentation on this?
I don't know. I say it's probably more from the stroke of a pen than from anything else.
And how many people did Palpatine physically kill? There was like 4 in the
4
throne
confirmed.
room scene. Yeah, in that one scene. That's it. I mean, that's all we see.
He killed Savage and then 3 of the
right.
Jedi Masters. Because Anakin technically killed Mace Windu.
Unconfirmed. No body.
Potentially killed. Yeah, that's what they said about Boba Fett too. Now he's back.
I'm holding out hope. Was it just 3? Were there only 4 people in there?
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason I was thinking 5, but yeah. It was the Horn guy, Kit Fisto, the other Horn guy.
And Windu.
And Mace Windu. Okay. Yeah, 3. And Savage Opress. We see. He never...
And he probably would have killed Maul too, but he kind of let him go.
He's a slippery one. Yeah. So that's another thing, is like how much of a mastermind he was. That for sure I agree with you on that. Like, he's the greatest, one of the greatest villains because of his control over that. There's a little Deus Ex Machina that he lives. Like, did you just get, is that the hook he landed on? Like, did he just, when he was falling down the thing, did he just get stuck on that and somehow survive the thing blowing up? And, or is that a clone? Yeah, somehow Palpatine survived or returned or whatever.
He probably had in my head canon at least, he had a contingency plan.
Yeah, which is what they did in the EU. He had a clone body that he transferred his consciousness in, right? And that happened a few times, if I'm not mistaken.
Because honestly, I think as far as that goes, it's a really cool idea. I don't like the way they executed it.
For this?
Yeah, for the movies. Like, having Palpatine come back, I am completely fine with that. Like, great twist. Oh, he's dead? No. He's had this in place since he took Chancellor position. But I feel like the build-up wasn't there. It's just like 2 movies, nothing. Oh, hey, start the 3rd movie.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
And that's where you get issues from having movies being written by committee and handing off what's meant to be a sequel trilogy from person to person. Like, it feels clunky. There's not going to be any build-up, or when they say like, oh, well, where'd this come from? You're literally playing a game of telephone, but to make a sequel to one of the biggest modern movie franchises of all time, and that's how you're gonna do it. For better or for worse, J.J. Abrams should have made the whole thing himself. Maybe take a little extra time in between films. They're Star Wars films. People will wait. They will come back. Even if they don't like them, they have to see how it ends.
Yeah.
The same with Doctor Who. There's so many people who keep saying, Doctor Who's dead, I'm not returning to it. Then those same people do come back to it and watch it, even if just to criticize or see how bad it's gotten. They still have to know. No matter how much they say they hate it, they're still gonna watch it.
I feel like my brain must just be wired differently. Everyone's like, I hate it. I'm gonna go watch the train wreck. And I watched it, I'm like, hey, it's pretty alright. I'm mad because I have to wait till spring.
I have my issues with it, but that's not really for here and now. And it's not for the same, my YouTube algorithm is all kinds of up, because you watch 1 or 2 people that, and that's the thing too, is like all of these criticisms I'm lobbing at Star Wars, it's not because it's woke or it's got 20% more black people. I don't understand how these people even like science fiction. Science fiction is about looking to a brighter future. Like in Star Trek, they form a utopia, and people are like, leave politics out of Star Wars or Star Trek. It's like, that's all Star Trek's ever been. You remember the episode with like the 2 guys, and it's the Riddler, the original Riddler, and one of them's half his face is painted black and the other is painted white, and the other race is like the opposite, is painted black and they're painted white, and one of them is like, they look the same. And this is the analogy, is one of them is like the diminutized race on the planet and the other one's the more powerful, and Kirk and Spock are looking at him like, you're the same. What the is this?
They did that in early Doctor Who too, with Hartnell's first run. The one guy's, it's like, oh, what's the difference between you? It's like, I've got this sash. Mm-hmm. It's like that's the only difference.
The Sensorites, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just when you look at that, and then it's like, well, they're the same, and yeah, take a look outside. We're just different colors. We're the same. That's the message. It's always been there. Anybody who does something else might do it in a convoluted, ham-fisted, heavy-handed way. It might not be written well, but the politics of we're all one, no matter what our sexual orientation are, what our religious beliefs or color or creed, it's always been there. So I like to hear what everybody's saying, which has led me to listening to some really stupid people that I might agree with some aspect of what they're saying about something, but for the wrong reason. I was talking to a friend of mine about this, someone who I barely know, and I'm like, I don't agree with your politics. I just agree with what you think about this one tiny aspect of this thing. But then when they're like, you know, it really feels like when people say these people hate women, it really feels like they hate women. Like, you put a woman on something and then they say, oh, well, this is woke now. Like, because it has a woman on it? Really? Like, so women can't have leading starring roles. Like, Daisy Ridley's actually a really good actress. I feel personally she got robbed. I can't think of a better word right now. I feel like she was done a massive disservice with these scripts. They did make her too powerful too fast. That's a thing. I think it could have been better written and better handled. And if they had had better relationship with her and Luke, it would have made for a better handoff.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people where they just killed Luke seemingly out of nowhere and they hadn't handled him well before then, it felt like we were dealing with an alternate universe version, a variant version of Luke that was completely different and so downtrodden than anything we'd ever seen. Then with somebody else being the optimistic one and then letting him die like unceremoniously the way that he was, it to a lot of people, I'm sure that led to a lot of hate for Daisy Ridley because it felt like they're taking that title away and that character and just putting it onto her and saying, this is the better version of what you like. Anyway, here's this. Whereas Luke had a reason to want to redeem Darth Vader. He found out it was his dad. It creates this dilemma. It was perfectly written. It creates this dilemma. Like, I have to bring balance to the universe. He's the ultimate evil, even though there's one above him. But that's the brawn. That's the muscle. But also there's this personal thing. Like, I'm responsible for him. I'm not responsible for Palpatine. That one, it'll take care of itself. We'll do something about it. We'll blow him up or something. But with my dad, I have a personal responsibility to either redeem him or kill him because that's on me. That's my dad. So, and he has to face all these internal struggles too. Am I evil? Will I fall to the dark side? Can I do this? Can I redeem him? Can I kill him? And it creates all of these ramifications. And then you wonder, like, is it really his dad? And, you find out it was. So perfectly executed. Like, criticize the acting, criticize the special effects and how he's gone back and rewritten things and added stuff in. But that one aspect of it, Luke's psychology going into from the end of the second movie, or really even the middle of the second movie, where they begin to foreshadow it in the forest when he's fighting the illusion of Darth Vader and sees himself in it, to the end of the finale. Perfect. Here's Rey's dilemma. This guy killed this old man I just met, but he's pretty hot, and we've kind of been talking on the side, and well, I do want to hold hands with him. That's her dilemma. Of course, then again, like, this guy killed his own dad right in front of her, and she's like, did I mention the part where she's like, he is cute? I mean, when he takes that scary mask off, he did try to kill me a couple times. We're past that. We are holding hands right now. Just saying. What?
Yeah.
I know, I slipped back to that. That makes me think, this is like an alternate timeline to, this is one of those like Star Wars visions or whatever. In this universe, I promise you, the Force is never in balance. Okay, there is something intrinsically wrong here. Even if that isn't Palpatine inside Rey, she's got something wrong with her. Daisy Ridley, I think Daisy Ridley did an amazing job of playing the sociopath. Those aren't easy to play when you're a caring, considerate, nice person. Something I think Daisy Ridley probably is. I've never met her. I want to say as many nice things about Daisy Ridley as possible because I'm going to say so many bad things about Rey, or what seems to be, because she's just doing her best. Like both characters are. They're just trying to get through their day, and they keep getting met with such up situations. Daisy Ridley gets a script across her desk at home, and they're like, they want you to be in Star Wars, and she's like, playing what? The new Luke Skywalker. What? Yes. I don't even care if it's for $1. This will solidify my career forever.
Yeah, same thing with Jake Lloyd. So, man, he didn't write it, guys. He was just a kid that he got put in front of it for an audition and did what he was told.
And that's the thing, too. I think George Lucas knew exactly what his acting capabilities were. I think that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted an annoying kid.
Yeah.
Like, slightly bratty and, like, jumpy, annoying, pitchy, because you want to see that. If he was like, you know, dour, like a depressed little kid, like if they brought me in to play the future Darth Vader, then you'd be like, this guy definitely gonna be the Darth Vader. It's like what Stephen King had a problem with the original Shining, Kubrick's Shining. You look at Jack Nicholson going into that interview, like,
Yeah. It's like, yeah, he's clearly crazy.
yeah, like, he's crazy at the beginning. But if you look at Stephen King's version he made for TV, was it Steven Weber? I can't remember his name. But the actor they got to play, the guy from Wings, he looks like just your everyday, like, young father. You're just, like, with puffy hair from the late 80s. And then, so when he goes crazy and gets, like, the bags under his eyes and there's, like, fire behind, you know, literally, like, that the place is going to be burning down behind him, and he's all bloody and bruised and sweaty and up. There's an arc. There's a change. You wanted to see how far someone could go. So that's why his acting is all over the place in episode 2, when they bring on Hayden Christensen. He's erratic. He's laughing as they're doing the chase when they're, you know, he's like diving the speeder thing, and Obi-Wan's like, Anakin, what are you doing? And he's like, ha, 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 ha. And then later he's killing women and children because they killed his mom. We've all been there, you know? I mean, they're like animals. And he slaughtered them like animals. And then into episode 3, we get very few moments of levity from him, at least. A few, but not as many. And even when we do, there's a sternness to it. It's a lot of his light is gone. That's the arc. We don't get any kind of development like that. And that's the thing I don't think a lot of people are getting. That's a great point about Jake Lloyd, because I think it's exactly what George Lucas intended. I wish he'd come out and said, if this point exactly, if we'd gotten anything else, it wouldn't have been as impactful. And this way, he went too far with Jar Jar. You know, he wanted, I firmly believe he wanted Jar Jar to be a villain later, and they just didn't do that. And they wanted it to be like Yoda. With Yoda, though, you get 5 minutes of him acting goofy.
Yeah, then you instantly see the break.
Yeah, he just turns it and is like, I cannot train this. Whereas Jar Jar, we get a 2-hour plus movie of him being like that. He couldn't go back on it. It was like, it's too built. He wanted to take it to the next level. You took it to the next 10 levels, and it's too much. If you turn that now, yes, it would be like rubbed out from under us moment, but it would be too unacceptable. Like, this guy? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been good depending on how they handled it, but if that guy just all of a sudden started speaking completely with like a deep voice and whatever, I'm glad that they redeemed at least the actor.
Yeah.
I still can't wait to see where he takes Grogu next and what happens to him. I hope he makes it, but if they do kill him, I hope it's an epic death. Anyway, the Force is not in balance.
But is it moving towards it?
I guess it depends. Are there any... See, and this is the semantics of this too. The Jedi are an order. It is synonymous with the light side of the Force, but it is not the only thing that can be the light side of the Force. So there's other Force wielders, and This is kind of like what Filoni, for better or for worse, anybody can train, anybody can eventually use the Force if you train hard enough or want it badly enough. You might never be like Grandmaster Luke Skywalker powerful, but you can at least do it.
Yeah. I mean, as far as that goes, that seed has always been there from the first movie of the Force being intertwined with everybody.
They do say that. I still am at odds with how that is presented.
Yes. I just thought of another point. You said that you don't think the Force is in balance. So my new question now is, with some stuff from the Clone Wars, can the Force ever be in balance?
That's the thing.
Because
I don't
the
think
father
so.
was killed.
Yeah.
And that was the mediary between the light and the dark.
That's the thing, is I think it's an ongoing struggle or battle. If it ever is, it's like moments, like a moment in time. Was it when Palpatine was killed, and then, you know, there's like Darth Vader and Luke essentially balancing the Force, that, you know, they're two extremes. And then with only Luke, I feel like Luke was kind of that true neutral, because he knew how to be, he was pulled in both directions. And that's why I think it was in balance in that moment. This is my headcanon, because I don't think that Lucas agrees with this, but it's like, look at him. He came in force choking those pigmen, and he's wearing black. I know that's symbolic, but that's the thing. He wants to be a Jedi. That's what's in his heart, is he wants to lean toward that, but he's got too much of his dad in him that pulls him in that other direction, and he had to use tactics from both to achieve his goals.
Do you think that that's what Balin is striving for? Because we see him both clinging to the past and his life in the Jedi Order, but the tactics he is using now, and even in that final scene with him in Ahsoka, he's looking at the statue of the father. And so that's my speculation and theories, is that's what he is searching for. How to
true
find
balance.
that balance.
Yeah, either within himself or to bring it, I think it's to bring it to the universe.
Yeah, but he must first find it in himself.
Yeah.
That's why he is on this journey.
Which is why he's tried to be incredibly fair about everything, to say it would be a shame to kill a Jedi, something he used to be. It's also, again, what I was saying, the Jedi are not the only thing that are like, that represent the light side of the... So there's so many other variables out there, and how you perceive that. I think if it is kind of this will of the universe, wink, then is there a sentience to the Force that is pushing itself toward balance, that creature, you know, like people are not aware of, that are not, you know, like it controls your action, it cooperates with you? Is there something about it that is yearning for balance? Now, the father isn't there any, but the son and the daughter are still exist. I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember if one died or not. Did the brother accidentally kill the daughter?
God, I watched that like just before I watched Ahsoka, and I cannot remember.
I want to have to go back.
It's like that. Ahsoka wasn't that... Yeah, so I was looking forward to see that. I initially thought Balin would be looking for the world between worlds so that he could go back and unwrite Order 66, and that we might, or he might, end up in a different timeline than what the normal characters are on. He might just stay... I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities with that. He would probably not have been successful, but I thought that might move us into territory of saying, without saying, we're now in a timeline that's different from the sequels, and whether that is the true original timeline and you just didn't know that you were on a different timeline with those. They won't come right out and say it, but it's implied. So I don't know, but it doesn't look like... I think actually you're right, Chris. Then again, that's the thing, we might never find out, and not because they won't make another season of it or continue that story in a different thing. It might be because these things are written by committee. It just depends on the committee. If Filoni is able to wrench enough power away and actually...
It looks like it's leaning in that direction. We'll see.
I do hope so. If it's him and it's the other guy, Favreau, if they can wield enough power and be really the new heads of Lucasfilm, even if it's just a de facto thing, and be the creative officers, that would be great. They've worked well together. I think if they argue, good arguments. Like, do this. Don't just agree on everything. Make sure you're right. Just like the Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks argument. You need to have those. I hope that they do. And I hope that they're able to be adults about it. Come away and say like, oh, that was a good one. We did it again. We up Boba Fett though, right?
Yeah.
We'll fix it later though.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
I think
I hope.
we kind of seen that a little bit with Ahsoka, because Filoni's like, hey, no, this is my baby. I'm writing this. Better for worse, I'm writing this, and he took that and ran with it.
So a lot of the main criticism in that I kept hearing, which actually comes back to Echo, the new Marvel series, which has its own set of issues, but overall was pretty good, was that it was Rebels Season 5. And I'm like, yeah, how did nobody see that coming? Of course it was Rebels Season 5. Did you not like, if you don't like Star Wars, don't watch Star Wars. If you think you can drop in on some, I don't know how people are like, yeah, I liked Supernatural, and like, I watched like maybe 60% of the seasons from like 1 to season 30. Like, I watched 1, 2 through 5. I dropped out for like 6 and 7. I came back for 9. That one got good again. I dropped out for like 5 seasons. Came back though on season 11 through 12 and a half. Then I got busy. Came back on season 15. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, how do people do that and think that you know what's going on? If you like Star Wars, guess what? There's a ton of it now. It's not just 6 movies anymore. There's Clone Wars was awesome. If you're like, I don't watch cartoons, well, I guess you're missing the out, aren't you? Because there's a lot that goes on in there, and it gets complicated. I didn't want to watch all of it for a while, but you know what? With all the new stuff coming out, realized I'm gonna have to go back and watch some of this stuff. Some of it I put on, I listened to like a podcast. I'm not gonna lie, there's a ton of it, and when you gotta get caught up quickly, sometimes it's gonna be on kind of in the background. Pause it, come back in for those truly epic awesome fight scenes. But I didn't want to watch Rebels. It looked dumb. It looked like the most kiddish thing. It was even more kiddish than the first season of Clone Wars, at least in the beginning. But I watched it because I knew Ahsoka was coming out, and I knew that it was going to be tied to that. So I got caught up on it. I don't love all the Mandalorian stuff. I don't like how that was the one thing that Filoni loved, and he's really leaned into that. But he's written the stuff pretty well, so I'm okay with it. That's my thing. Like with Echo, I get the thing with Marvel too, because there's just so much Marvel. And I can see if somebody doesn't want to watch She-Hulk, they shouldn't have to watch She-Hulk to appreciate something that goes on with Thanos or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't, But with Echo, they kind of did, and people might hate this, but the first episode was, spoiler alert, kind of for the first episode, but it's also kind of not, because you've probably watched Hawkeye. If you're watching this, that's where she was introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And a lot of it is a recap of all of Hawkeye with a lot of added in stuff from her childhood. And then there'd be a clip directly from Hawkeye, not even reshot to my knowledge. And then maybe some deleted scene footage or bonus scene footage that expands on some things. And I thought, oh man, I feel like this maybe should have been 6 episodes, because this first one feels almost like a throwaway. But it's one of those things, like, you don't just get dropped in with all this information you would have been missing if you didn't watch Hawkeye. That's what they should have done with Ahsoka. I said that while we were watching it. I was like, a lot of people are going to complain that this is first episode is almost an entire recap of something else with extra stuff, but that's the same thing people complain about with Ahsoka. Is like, I don't know what's going on. Well, you should have watched the show that it was a continuation from. Everybody knew that. It'd be like watching Boba Fett and be like, my favorite character is Boba Fett. All right, am I going to know what's going on with Boba Fett? No. Seriously? Boba Fett's my favorite character. I only watched the 7 minutes that he is in from Star Wars. I don't even like Star Wars. I just like Boba Fett. I've got a DVD specially made that has the 7 minutes of Star Wars that he's in, right? I put that on sometimes to remind me, Boba Fett for life.
I mean, I'm not going to say prove. I'm going to say reinforce the idea that Star Wars fans just love to hate on Star Wars.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
and Marvel fans love to hate on anything woke, I guess.
I don't know. Because it's like, if your only argument for Ahsoka is it's Rebels Season 5, do you have an argument?
No, you don't. That's the thing. I kept hearing people say that online so much. And I was like, do you just not like Star Wars?
It's like saying, hey, Return of the Jedi, man, that just continued that story from the last movie.
Yeah, which I didn't watch. That's my thing, is
It's like, why is this guy frozen in this stuff?
I get that it's saying like it's the same, but it is different, and I get that. To make the analogy with like how many seasons did Supernatural go on for? Because it was a long time,
up in the double digits.
But yeah, like teens, or I thought it got close to 20 years and it finally ended.
Probably. I've not finished all of it, so
I've never watched any. I've watched 1 or 2 episodes, and that's because somebody else made me, because I knew how long it was, and it's probably good. I have nothing against it. It's like, I mean, it's pretty woke. 2 dudes riding around in a car, right? Chasing ghosts or whatever they do. I don't know. It's just, I'm making fun of stupid people. I know if it was 2 women anyway, but to be able to not watch something, people was like, I skipped out on that part of a season and then came back at the end. Like people do that. Like I skipped that episode. How could you skip that episode? Even if there's no character development or story, whatever, like, are you going to watch it or not? Some people can do that. I don't understand it. I'm just OCD enough. I don't understand how you can do that. You take it up to a bigger thing, like a whole season of a show, like, I don't know, the Glory season of Buffy, or that one where she fought the Frankenstein monster. Not the best season, but still, it had some really important stuff in there that you might not fully understand the ramifications of what happens in later seasons if you miss that one whole season. And then you bring it to a bigger thing like a franchise that has whole shows. Now, we're not talking about like a 20-year, 24-episode per season show, but if it's like skipping a whole show like Rebels, which is not nothing, but do you really want to watch this new thing? Yeah, is it like 6 or 8 episodes? Sure, it's not very long. And Rebels it is much longer than that. So it's an undertaking. I don't have time for that all the time. That's why I avoided it for so long. And I didn't have anything that it was on. It would have been like buy the DVDs or whatever.
That's why I put it off. I didn't have the channel, so I didn't want to.
Yeah, and I did too. And then when I did have it, it was like, well, I do have it, and I had it for a while. I may as well. So, but yeah, it comes down to, you know, are you a fan of this? Do you want to watch it? Do you have to consume everything? I haven't read all the books, the EU books. I haven't read all the new comic books for the new expanded universe. No. So I guess everybody has to draw their own lines. But when you do that, you can't necessarily... there was some valid... I think some of that's valid, too. After having said all that, some of it, I thought about, like, what about the people who didn't watch Rebels? They're going to be really lost. Or did it feel like you were lost in episode 4, A New Hope, when it's literally you don't get the first 3 episodes? They don't exist. And like clearly a battle has taken place because they're chasing this thing, and this guy comes in we've not been introduced to, but pretty sure he's the bad guy. They kill a bunch of the good guys because they're not the bad guys, and they take a princess prisoner. Then 2 robots jump ship. What the It feels like we're getting dropped right in the middle of a story. We have no idea what's going on, and we'll kind of pick it up as we go along. That's how Star Wars has always been. You get dropped in the middle of a big story.
Because even the movies, not direct continuations, dropped in a couple years later.
Yeah, episode 1, which whatever convoluted thing was going on prior to that, 2 Jedi drop into a thing. Then hilarity ensues. They fight a bunch of stuff. Clearly things have happened before then. It wasn't as, I think maybe they could have jumped forward a bit and dropped us into a more exciting scene. Maybe even just like 5 minutes later when that thing drops down and blows the ship up and Obi-Wan and Anakin jump up. Not Obi-Wan and Anakin. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon jump up, and, you know, what an intro that would have been. But they have to always start with the space scene. So, yeah, I don't know. Force is not in balance. I don't even care anymore, but I just feel like that's the case. And I feel like Palpatine definitely had canon, at least, to control a Rey's body. He might be playing the long game.
He's proven that he can do that.
Yeah, that version of her that she sees a vision of, that's like double-bladed lightsaber with fangs or whatever. I think that's like her seeing her future, because from when Palpatine is like gonna take over her body, and he's like, yeah, I'm a woman now. I'm like skinny and hot, and I'll have sharpened teeth, and like I'm gonna almost kill Chewbacca, but like the only reason she didn't is, yet again, Deus Ex Machina. I don't know why I keep almost saying Deus Ex Machina, but I do. Anyway, the only reason that she didn't like Force lightning blowing up that little pod or whatever and killing Chewbacca is just because they had put him on a different thing at the last minute or whatever, and she just didn't know it. So, yeah, even if she isn't Palpatine, which she is a Palpatine, but even if she doesn't have Palpatine's life force inside of her, she still almost killed Chewbacca there. So there's like, you know, she knew he was on there. She was trying to get him, and she was like, no, I would rather see him blown up than end up in your clutches, your hot, sultry clutches, Kylo Ren. And then, like, straight up killed him. And then she was like, oh no, my actions have consequences. I feel mildly bad about this. I must bring balance to the Force.
This thing I just learned about 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, so, and all this from a misunderstanding between the two of us. I seriously thought that you had said, that you meant, does that mean the Force is now balanced? That's what I thought you meant. And then it was only this morning that we'd spent 5 weeks thinking about this because we had, was it that night we had dinner? And I said, no, you, this is what we're talking about. Did you bring the microphones? Because we'll do this right now.
I think we had gone out to dinner that night, but I think you sent it to me after the fact.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, because it was at night, I think, or at least that's when I got to the message.
Oh.
So.
Okay. Because I was just like, I've thought about it the whole time, but I guess I only glanced at your response and saw that and it was like, so whenever I go to the restroom, I pull my phone out and check if I've gotten anything or whatever and check any new messages. And so it's usually a pretty fast, like pull my phone out, glance over what I've got, put it back in my pocket and get back to whatever I was doing if I'm at work. Hope nobody heard that from work. Anyway, so that's how that could have gotten glossed over. And then I went back to find it today to fully read it to see what the premise was going to be. I read your response to see what I was going to be responding to exactly. And I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of agree with that. Actually, this is all based on a huge misunderstanding. So I don't know if I know there's a couple people from work who have told me they listen. Not consistently, but they drop in and out. I don't think that we've never confirmed or denied where exactly I work at is. I have a very short story that I debated on sharing, but it's not funny. It's not funny at all, and it's super up. But it was kind of an eye-opener, and I really thought long and hard about, you can cut this and put it in somewhere else or push it around or whatever, or let it set organically. I don't really care, but I wanted to share this with you because I know that you've probably had a similar experience somewhere, because where you worked at a similar type of retail store, and you dealt with you've told me stories about dealing with higher-ups, or if not further higher-ups, even just one rung up, and how badly they handled their position, the abuse of power. This wasn't any of that, although I've had a lot of that, especially recently. We've had really lost a lot of good people, lost some bad people too, so is the Force imbalance? No. We just had our inventory, okay? Now, in the past 2 years, we've been moving toward doing it differently, whereas we used to have a crew come in. A lot of places still do this. You have a crew come in and they count your stuff for you. Certain things that you count, pre-count, and then you go behind them and make sure they've counted accurately. So it's a lengthy, exhaustive process. A lot of the pre-work takes place several days prior to it, leading up to it, and it's a one-day event. Some places might do 2, I'm not sure. Ours is small enough that it was generally a one-day event. They would come in and they would leave. Now, and the way we order our departments is on an iPad. The iPad has all the stuff laid out in order. You go through, you look at what you need, you order what you need, and that's it. The way that we do our inventory now and have for the past year is you go through and you just count every single item and put in the number of exactly what you have, and it's basically like a snapshot of what you had in that moment, and that's the number they go based on. So I'm ordering in my old department. I just got moved departments, and I'm ordering in my old department because I'm the most familiar with it. I was there 6 or 7 years, so he went ahead and had me stay in that one for counting on inventory day. And I'm not gonna name names. I'm not gonna name exact positions, because that would give it away too. I'm just going to say 2 people from higher positions, a few rungs up above me. I'm a department manager. These people are above that. And don't work in my store. They work in other stores. One of them was talking about the people who work under them. I'll try to be vague. And they were just basically talking about how they were disappointed with some of how their inventories go or how their numbers come out, because they know that their store orders a lot in the district, but they never have the best inventory, which you would think that they would, because they order so much. Their orders are so high, they should be, like taking that much money in, but their inventories aren't necessarily reflecting that. Then somehow the conversation with the other person turned to that person's individual department heads and how they felt about them, and how some of the people, one person had left recently, another person got put in a position during the Christmas season. That's on her, like you can't expect the best job out of somebody who gets trained and thrown in the deep end.
Literally a baptism by fire in retail.
That person was fair about that. No genders here. And I respect that. Then it turned to, they literally talked about like everybody in the store. Again, trying to be fair. I didn't hear a lot that, is like hearing these like this corporate jargon, and it was kind of disgusting just to hear these people talk about like how I would talk about my pawns. My pawns are pieces of plastic on a board I have at home. The only thing that they mean to me is that I paid a lot of money for them because it's a nice set, and I would not want to part with them. But at the end of the day, they're just pawns. I will let you take a pawn. I will sacrifice one. They stay with me though. The other person, who is on a higher rung than the other person, these 2 people were not equals. One of them was higher. They talked about another person, and she said how she was disappointed with their performance during inventory. And the other person said, yes, they haven't been the same since their husband passed away. And she agreed. And then it was repeated. Yeah, I don't know what the problem is, but they haven't been the same since their husband passed. It's just, I guess that's what, yeah. And they trailed off into talking about other things, and I was stuck in this one spot where they were on the other side of an aisle, just hanging out, waiting for stuff to get done. And I was in product dense area, where there was like a few hundred things to count right there. Like, I'm not moving for 20-30 minutes because I'm right here counting like dozens of things right where my 2 feet are planted. So I have to listen to this. There's no way I cannot listen to this, because it's not like I'm within earshot. It's like I was in distance that I could have been taking part in the conversation. And I was like, is this just how corporate types talk about people? That like you could actually be so disconnected from reality to say a comment like that? Like, yeah, your performance just isn't the same since your husband passed away. I don't want to be indelicate, but we need to see more from you. I don't really know or can understand, being a sociopathic robot, what the issue could possibly be. Did you have feelings for this person? Or was it just someone you lived with? I understand you were, married? I hope this person's wife never dies, because I know how big of an inconvenience that might have to be to like take half a day off work to attend a social function. I believe it's referred to as a funeral. Yeah, not to mention the day before they usually have a visitation with other family units. I can't begin to tell you how disgusted I was with this and how much I want out of this system. When people talk about like, oh, it's retail, it's corporate America, and maybe even worldwide, that like people think like this, they speak like this. I don't think it's an isolated incident.
That's why the Daleks are such the greatest enemy in Doctor Who.
Yeah, it speaks to that level, and I think it can be taught. I think that's why when people talk about Nazi Germany, it's the thought contagion. It's when they say you were a division, you were an average of the 5 people you give the most time to, because it seeps in, and there it is. When all you think about or talk about or look at people are as numbers and what they can do for you, do you really stop seeing humanity? And then I was like, it was an overwhelming feeling, because I looked at the totality of, is that what everyone begins to think like that, you know, when you get one rung up, two rungs. I'm a department manager. So in my store, there would be an assistant. Then there's the co-manager, which is virtually, it's meant to be the same rank as the store manager, essentially, but it's not, because at the end of the day, the store manager is the store manager. And then that's it for a store. Above that, you would have the district manager. And beyond that, it gets dicey. I don't
then you
remember
got
all
your
that.
zone vice president, zone president.
Yeah, and every company has different names from there's regional things and what have you. So some of ours in the company, the nameless company that I've been at, have been in place for a really long time, and they haven't moved positions. The other thing I think is that we had a boom in 2020 with a lot of free money being given out. Trump gave out a lot of stimulus checks because of, you know, argue for better or for worse, whatever the case may have been. People had money that was disposable money, and they went out and shopped. They used it. They didn't pay down debt. Some people may have, but people went out and got guitars. They went out and got, you know, had the biggest Christmas ever, or what have you. And people who are disconnected from reality thought that this boom will never end, and 2021 will be the biggest and best ever. And then when there were diminishing returns since then every year, it makes it look like, oh, we're doing worse, when really, no, we're not going to replicate the year the world shut down. I don't understand how they don't understand this. Anyway, I've got to get out of there.
Yeah.
And mostly because this is how these people think and react. And maybe I don't think it's an isolated incident. I think it's by and large maybe how a lot of people think or view other people, just as commodities or a drone. It wasn't a joke. It was just a pragmatic statement. And the coldness with which that was delivered was shocking, to say the least. I don't know if you ever heard anything that egregious that was just that. I could go on, and I don't want to. I don't know if you ever heard anything similar to that, or as bad, or what you would view as bad or worse where you were at. I mean, you're more you can be more open about your stuff because you left
I could be more open, but we would get demonetized in a heartbeat. I still have some anger issues over that.
I don't blame you. I know you've told me some stuff that is hard not to take personally.
Oh, yeah. So essentially, corporate America is the empire, and people are wondering why rebellions are popping up.
Yeah. Easy to figure out if you look at it from a certain point of view.
I think that's a good place to end. You know, everyone that's with us this far, thank you. Welcome back. If you're a new viewer, like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. Let us know what you guys think. Is the force in balance? Is it not in balance? And as our normal audience knows, hopefully you're welcome. You get 4 debates for the price of one here. And our take on corporate America. Until next time.